Lin Fan did not run. Running belonged to people who wished to turn suspicion into certainty. He stood beneath the side hall awning with the water jar at his back, breathing shallowly until the next surge of root pain passed. The square had thinned, but not emptied. Stewards moved between platform and register table. The last disciples disappeared down the steps in clusters, already reshaping the morning into stories. Elder Gu and the white-haired elder remained before the spirit root pillar, their robes still against the faint breeze. No one watched Lin Fan closely enough. That would change soon. He needed to leave before the elders finished deciding how valuable he might be. A direct request would fail. A disappearance would trigger pursuit. A collapse would invite examination. Therefore, the correct path was controlled obedience that created a reason to move away under another person's authority. The junior steward from yesterday's complaint had just arrived. Lin Fan recognized him from memory and from the steward's sudden reluctance to step fully into the square. He was a thin man in a faded blue outer steward robe, with a narrow mustache and a habit of rubbing his thumb against his sleeve when nervous. Yesterday, when the old 16-year-old Lin Fan complained about Zhang Hu stealing rice, the steward had waved him away after hearing Zhang Hu's name. Now the dismissed complaint had been spoken before elders. The steward knew it. His eyes searched the square and found Zhang Hu first. Zhang Hu looked away. Then the steward found Lin Fan near the side hall. Their gazes met. The steward's thumb began rubbing his sleeve. Useful. Lin Fan lowered his eyes first, not in submission, but in a way that let the steward believe a conversation might still be controlled. The steward hesitated, then walked toward him. Lin Fan. Steward. Elder Gu may ask about yesterday. His voice was low. You should answer carefully. Lin Fan looked at him. Carefully? The steward's jaw tightened. Do not make the matter larger than it was. It was dismissed. Yes. Correct. It was dismissed. Because it was small. Lin Fan let silence answer. The steward grew more uncomfortable. Before the test, he could have threatened, slapped, or deducted rations. After the test, Lin Fan had become uncertain property. Not high enough to protect himself, but abnormal enough that mishandling him might reflect upward. The steward needed Lin Fan quiet. Lin Fan needed the steward's anxiety. I feel root pain, Lin Fan said. The steward took half a step back. Then tell Elder Gu. Elder Gu is inspecting the pillar. Wait. If I vomit blood here, will that be considered waiting carefully? The steward's expression changed. He glanced toward the elders. Neither had turned. The square was mostly empty, but several disciples still lingered near the stairs. If Lin Fan visibly worsened under the steward's watch, and if yesterday's dismissed complaint became part of the story, the steward could be tied to both negligence and damage to a possibly valuable disciple. Fear did not make him kind. It made him useful. There is an outer treatment room below the side hall, the steward said. Only basic herbs. You can sit there until called. Lin Fan lowered his head. Without Elder Gu's permission? The steward disliked being forced to own the decision. I will inform him. Then disciple thanks steward. The steward's mouth twitched. He heard the trap too late. If he informed Elder Gu afterward, he had permitted the movement. If he did not, he had concealed it. Either way, Lin Fan now had a path under steward authority. Go, the steward said. Do not wander. Yes, steward. Lin Fan turned toward the narrow path beside the side hall. He walked calmly. Not slowly enough to seem reluctant. Not quickly enough to seem eager. Every step down the side path drew him farther from the platform and deeper into the lower service area of the testing grounds. The stones here were older, cracked by roots and neglect. Moss grew along the wall. A drainage channel carried thin water toward the herb terraces below. The sounds of the square dulled behind him. The body wanted to sag against the wall. He did not allow it. The outer treatment room sat under the side hall, half storage and half excuse. A wooden door hung open. Inside were 2 low beds, a cabinet of basic powders, a basin, and the smell of dried leaves. No physician waited there. Outer disciples were not important enough to receive one during ordinary tests. Perfect. Lin Fan entered and closed the door most of the way, leaving it open a finger width so it did not look hidden. He moved to the cabinet. The lock was simple. Not even a true lock. A brass latch with a minor Chi thread to record opening. The steward's authority token would normally release it. Lin Fan did not have the token, but the Chi thread was designed to deter panicked disciples, not someone who had once dismantled immortal vaults. He pressed 2 fingers to the latch. Pain shot through his right arm. He used the pain as cover, letting the meridian spasm mimic the pulse of an outer steward's low-grade authority token. The Chi thread flickered uncertainly, accepted the shape, and loosened. The cabinet opened. Inside were poor materials. Dried heat-clearing leaves. Bruise powder. Bitter root slices. Low-grade clotting grass. A cracked jar of meridian warming paste. 2 spoiled Chi recovery pills. 3 strips of yellow paper for recording dosage. Not enough. Enough to prevent collapse. Lin Fan selected the heat-clearing leaves, bitter root, and a pinch of meridian warming paste. He ignored the Chi recovery pills. They were too impure and would worsen the poison ring. He crushed the leaves between his fingers, mixed them with water from the basin, added bitter root shavings, and swallowed the mixture without expression. The taste was foul. The effect was immediate. Cold bitterness spread into the stomach, then downward. The root heat slowed by a fraction. The poison ring stopped scraping for 3 breaths, then resumed less violently. The meridian paste, applied thinly along the right wrist and forearm, eased the raw channel enough that his fingers stopped trembling. Temporary. But temporary was a bridge. He closed the cabinet and pressed the Chi thread back into place. It would show opening if examined carefully, but not theft unless someone counted the herbs. No one counted poor herbs after every test. Lin Fan sat on the edge of the low bed. Only then did he allow the body one controlled shudder. It passed through him from root to jaw and ended in the fingers. Sweat gathered at the back of his neck. He wiped it away before it could reach the collar. The root mark remained. He turned inward as much as safety allowed. The low-grade wood root was still weak. The poison ring still threatened future damage. But the green-black thread was open at the tip, split into 2 barely visible directions. A tiny command held there like a dark seed. Remain open. Do not heal crooked. Await material. Lin Fan's mouth curved by the smallest amount. The old fate had cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. Cracks were where blades entered. Outside, footsteps approached. He erased the expression before the door opened. The junior steward looked in, saw Lin Fan sitting on the bed, and seemed relieved that no blood covered the floor. Elder Gu was still inspecting the pillar, the steward said. You will wait here. Yes, steward. Do not touch anything. I understand. The steward's gaze moved to the cabinet. Lin Fan let his breathing remain weak but steady. The steward did not inspect it. Anxiety pulled him back toward the square more strongly than suspicion pulled him inward. If anyone asks, I sent you here because you looked unwell. Lin Fan lowered his eyes. Steward is considerate. The steward's face twitched. He knew mockery might be hidden there. He could not prove it. That uncertainty made him leave faster. The door remained half open. Lin Fan listened. Voices drifted down from the square. Elder Gu, the residue is gone, but the lower channel was disturbed. White-haired elder, by the pillar? Elder Gu, or by the root? An outer disciple's root should not disturb the channel. Unless it responded to pressure in a way the pillar misread. Or unless something changed it before the test. Silence. Then the white-haired elder's voice, lower. The boy filed a complaint yesterday, was injured, appeared different this morning, and produced an abnormal root response. That is too many coincidences for one outer disciple. Elder Gu did not answer at once. Lin Fan sat still. The observer's ring stirred again, faint and cold. The existence beyond the world was watching the investigation begin. Let it watch. The white-haired elder continued, send someone to East Lower Quarter. Ask who saw him last night. Ask whether anyone entered his room. Ask what he ate. Ask why the complaint was dismissed. Good. The investigation would move through yesterday. Not through death. Not through rebirth. Not through the observer. Let the sect dig in mud and find muddy answers. Kitchen corruption. Steward negligence. Zhang Hu's bullying. Perhaps they would even find the diluted root powder contaminating rations. Each discovery would explain part of Lin Fan's abnormality and hide the whole. The best concealment was not darkness. Darkness invited lanterns. The best concealment was a trail of partial truths, each one satisfying enough to delay the next question. If the elders found contaminated rations, they would explain the poison residue. If they found Zhang Hu's assault, they would explain disturbed circulation. If they found the dismissed complaint, they would explain why Lin Fan seemed different, anger, fear, perhaps desperate focus before the test. If they inspected the pillar's inferior repair metal, they would explain the abnormal channel response. None of those explanations would be false. None would be complete. Incomplete truth was harder to kill than a lie. Lin Fan listened to the orders spread. One steward was sent toward East Lower Quarter. Another toward the meal hall. A third was told to summon the junior steward who had dismissed the complaint, unaware that the man had already entangled himself further by sending Lin Fan to the treatment room. The investigation split into branches, each branch carrying attention away from the only thing that mattered. Inside Lin Fan, the root mark pulsed once. The heat had slowed but not vanished. He had perhaps 2 hours before symptoms became difficult to hide. Enough. He arranged those 2 hours in his mind. First, remain in the treatment room long enough to appear obedient and unthreatening. Let the junior steward believe he had contained a problem. Let Elder Gu believe Lin Fan was waiting. Let the white-haired elder focus on gathering external facts. Second, use the side hall's lower corridor. In his memory, that corridor connected to the old supply slope behind the meal hall. In the first life, he had used it once years later while carrying herb baskets as punishment. The door at the end stuck in damp weather. Today was dry enough. If unchanged, it would open. Third, reach the meal hall stores before the investigation team finished questioning the kitchen. The contaminated root powder would still be there unless someone had already hidden it. If hidden, the hiding itself would reveal who controlled the dilution scheme. Either outcome had value. Fourth, secure cooling leaves, clean grain, and, if possible, a copper token or written order linked to the junior steward. Not theft for its own sake. Access. Fifth, return before absence became escape. The plan was ugly and narrow. That made it suitable for a weak body. He did not resent the narrowness. Grand strategies belong to those with armies, treasuries, loyal subordinates, and enough strength to survive attention. Lin Fan currently possessed a damaged root, a stolen hour, partial memory, and the contempt of people who had not yet learned to fear him properly. A narrow plan matched narrow means. That was discipline. Use the weapon in hand. Do not mourn the one lost. He opened his eyes and looked around the treatment room again. The low beds were poorly built, but their frames were tied with old hemp cord. The basin was cracked, but the crack formed a sharp ceramic edge. The cabinet held dosage paper, and dosage paper could carry messages, false or real. The window near the back wall was too narrow for an adult steward, but a thin outer disciple could pass through if necessary. Beyond it lay the drainage slope leading toward the service path. Every poor room had tools if one stopped expecting them to look like treasures. Lin Fan rose from the bed slowly and tested his balance. The cooling mixture had dulled the fever enough for movement. His right arm remained weak, but the fingers obeyed. The root junction hurt with each step, pain meant the mark still existed. He took that as confirmation rather than complaint. From the square, a steward shouted for 2 disciples to carry a message to East Lower Quarter. Time was moving. So would he. But movement did not mean haste. He sat again before the junior steward could return, arranged his breathing into the shallow rhythm of someone enduring pain, and let the room present exactly the image others expected, a pale disciple waiting where he had been placed. Inside that stillness, the next escape route remained open. The treatment room's half-open door framed a narrow strip of corridor. Lin Fan watched shadows pass through that strip. Steward robes. Disciple shoes. The hem of Elder Gu's gray sleeve once, pausing outside long enough to listen, then moving on. None entered. That was good. Every person who chose not to enter confirmed the image he had arranged. Weak. Contained. Waiting. 3 wrong words. Elder Gu said, and Lin Fan? Keep him under observation. Do not frighten him into hiding symptoms. Do not let other disciples touch him. If his root stabilizes at mid-grade, he is worth correcting. If it mutates, he is worth more. Worth. The sect had finally found a new number for him. Lin Fan lowered his eyes. Being valued was another form of being hunted. He had expected that. Footsteps moved away from the pillar. Orders were given. Stewards scattered. Lin Fan remained on the low bed, calm as a weak disciple waiting for elder judgment. Inside, he had already chosen the next path. Before sunset, he needed to reach the meal hall kitchen or intercept the junior steward's access token. Before night, he needed to stabilize the poison ring. Within 3 days, he needed the medicinal pool beneath the 3rd outer mountain. Before the sect finished explaining him to itself, he needed to become harder to contain. The first public reversal was complete. Zhang Hu had lost certainty. Elder Gu had gained interest. The white-haired elder had gained suspicion. And somewhere inside Azure Cloud sect, the question had been spoken aloud. Lin Fan should not have changed this much overnight. Lin Fan closed his eyes and listened to the sect begin looking in the wrong direction.